welcome to the Push to Shove podcast. The Push to Shove podcast is a podcast that I created to, I guess, it's all about, mindset, like what's going on inside your brain when push comes to shove. Like with most people, it's like, I don't know. When push comes to shove, I freeze, I go crazy, I end up in jail, I back out like a lizard. Like when push comes to shove, in business, someone just, at work, bullied me and I don't know what to do, So this podcast is to delve into the minds of, people of all walks of life to get everyone ready for when that happens. And because that's one thing that when I grew up, if I was ready for a lot of situations, I think I would be, 10 years ahead in life. So that's what the podcast is. And plus, you're an interesting dude. You came onto the radar and you've just been like, just crazy active.
Yeah.
So I've always wanted to talk to you, and like in and out of the gym, we don't talk to anyone. We don't hang around. We just get in. We're like, zzz, and then do our thing, and get the fuck out of there, right? So maybe we're gonna introduce you, the Snatch Sensei. Tell us a bit about yourself, and I guess where you came from, your background, and what you do.
All right, so I'm Vu. I do have a name, so I go on the Snatch Sensei at the moment. But yeah, my name is Vu, Vietnamese, born but been here most of my life. 2166 boy, so that's Canleyville, Cabramatta, with all the Asians.
Yep.
So grew up here. Fast track basketball was like my first love. So skinny, kind of lanky basketballer. Didn't get into the gym until a little bit later on. I wasn't like a lot of guys who like wanted to get into the bodybuilding phase, I guess, like late teens, around then when you want to put on some muscle like Arnie. But I did get into that first. That was always the first goal, like getting into the gym and like doing stuff that you don't really know what to do, like half rep bench press, all that stuff. So that got boring for me real quick. Just being from a competitive sport background, playing basketball, I liked, I guess, the expression of like the sport, playing with a team, competing, just like different stuff like that. So I kind of like saw this thing called CrossFit on the radar, on YouTube. At the time, Rich Froning was the man. So all this sort of like intense training, bit more functional, bit more fitness related. And I kind of like was like, interested in that, and thought, okay, I'm going to give this a shot, because I felt like it would help me with my basketball more. So I got into CrossFit initially, and I guess like most people, you get into CrossFit and you kind of really get into it, especially first year. You kind of like, what's this like feeling like on the floor, like got smashed, but then like just that rush of like, you just keep coming back for more. It's so varied. The atmosphere, coaches, teams, so team atmosphere, everyone supporting you. So I got into that for a couple years. Through CrossFit, obviously, Olympic weightlifting is a component. And then I started to gravitate towards Olympic weightlifting training. I had a bit of talent towards weightlifting. Dave just comes into flex.
Just random models.
It's over here, the camera's there.
Random models just walking in and out of the office.
Shirtless.
Looking pre-workout.
Yeah.
Standard gym stuff, right?
Yeah, so I got into weightlifting. Decided to pursue that competitively, so that became my mode of training from there. So I spent a good couple years. There was a little bit less resource in weightlifting realm around that time in terms of knowledge base, as well as coaching. Like weightlifting specific was still quite a niche underground market. You had to kind of like there was really no avenue to discover just weightlifting and competing in weightlifting.
How long ago was that?
About 4 or 5 years ago. So there were weightlifting clubs, but you kind of they were very like small, not mainstream, only a few members kind of thing, like people that started young, found it through one way or another. So that was back then. So, and there was really no connection or communication between CrossFit and weightlifting specific coaches and clubs back then. There was really no organic kind of like community. So if you were a CrossFitter,
probably resistance, if anything, right?
Yeah, there was big resistance with when CrossFit blew up, because obviously weightlifting has its traditional method, and they're not looking to do like high reps for time.
Yeah, and we had all of us had no mobility. We had no glutes.
It's understandable that weightlifting felt that way, because they're an Olympic sport that have been around for decades, and CrossFit, like, to be fair, like they blew up and have done a lot for fitness, but as a CrossFitter and a CrossFit coach, no one really knew what they were doing with weightlifting earlier on. Like, everyone can look back and be like, if you're around CrossFit then, you're like, we didn't really know.
Yeah.
We're just giving it a go.
Oh, yeah.
So it's kind of fair from both sides, but CrossFit was having a go at the weightlifting thing. So it was a bit of a learning curve in CrossFit deciding to go with weightlifting, because that just wasn't happening really. But I just was geared towards that challenge. I think I've always been geared towards trying to find the challenge for me that might be slightly different within what I'm doing, and that was being the only weightlifter in a CrossFit gym and a CrossFit world, trying to really push it, and figuring that out with at the time the lack of, I guess, resource and coaching. So I mean, the CrossFit coaches at the time was just jump and shrug, and that's as far as your weightlifting kind of knowledge went, just enough to get by in the CrossFit workouts.
So break it down. What's your method?
My method, I think, was an advantage going through that journey in CrossFit myself, and then now also being within the space where it's traditional weightlifting, full-time weightlifters, how to build that up. So having a mix of both worlds, and also a lot more open knowledge and crossover now between weightlifting, CrossFit, general population, and how to coach and train just regular people, as well as crossover with physios and professionals, where it's okay, don't just do snatch, clean and jerk, squat, because you're gonna potentially get broken. There's accessory work that you need to do. So having that melting pot of mix, being able to cater to more people, so being more accessible. So being able to make sure someone can progress consistently over a long period of time, that is not just elite weightlifter that has no mobility issues or injuries, as well as catering to the person. Because with weightlifting, it was always okay, weightlifters start young and they develop, and they're good, but now you have people that are just late 30s that just pick up the sport. Yep. And they have all these issues.
That's me.
Yeah, and maybe even just overweight, confidence, movement coordination. is not comparable to someone who's been doing weightlifting for 10 years when they started as a teen.
Yeah.
So the coaching needs to be more adjustable, I think.
And then, so were you traditionally trained? Did you have coaches, or did you just figure all this out yourself?
I figured a lot out by myself through trial and error, because, like as I said, there was no like there wasn't as much coaching resource at the time, whether it be coaching access to weightlifting or online. So now there's a lot more knowledge online, on Instagram. A lot of people just like CrossFit coaches are good weightlifting coaches now, generally speaking. You know, from like beginner to intermediate kind of like level.
Yeah.
So you couldn't really get access to the weightlifting coaches with experience at the time, because they had weightlifting clubs and you kind of just had to be a full-time member of that club. So you couldn't kind of like quite get in there and get coaching yet as a CrossFitter.
Yeah.
Now it's easier because like they're open to like CrossFitters getting
They know.
like partial training from them, rather than
Yeah.
it's you have to be in the club kind of thing. So
Yeah.
it was a lot of trial and error, and learning by myself. Did a lot of seminars. I did end up, when I was competing for 2 years full time, being a part of a weightlifting club full time. So having that coach and programming structure, proper weightlifting, also shaped me. But prior to that, also going through my own journey of self-learning, in a time where if I had the resources we have now, I probably would have halved the time it took me to progress. But I believe that journey helped me be a better coach now, because we learn from our own learning and mistakes, so that we're more efficient to coach people now. So it's like, hey, I did all this crap myself. I came out on top the right way in the end. It took me a lot longer. I'm going to save you time now. So
in your opinion, what are the most common, like, just mistakes of, say, weightlifting coaches and then actually weightlifters, or like CrossFit weightlifters?
Patience is a big one in terms of the weight. The weight that's on the bar. Everyone wants to like, and the hard part with CrossFit is everyone wants to keep up. You know, there's that friendly competitiveness, so it's hard to like pull that ego back and just be, okay, look, I'm not there yet with like my technique.
Yeah.
So
and
pushing
like,
the weight, like,
so say the weight was too heavy, what would be a straight up, like, because I don't think even people know if it's too heavy.
no, people don't.
They don't know. So
it's
what
on
would
the
they be
coach.
looking
Yeah. Just like control, like I would say control in their technique, and stability. So the problem with a snatch is you end up overhead, right? And like the shoulder joint, like supporting this weight overhead, if you're not stable, then you can see it. Basically, it shakes. So that's an indication for me, because the issue with that is from the floor to like maybe the hip. For most people, their leg and posterior chain strength is like, that's not an issue to pull that weight up. The issue is then, okay, they can get that weight up, but then are their shoulders stable enough to really support it through multiple reps and practice, which most of the time it takes more time to build that up. But because people have the strength to pull the weight, for the most part, like in their first year of weightlifting, that's where it gets tricky. The second thing I would say is, apart from patience and like kind of like that fine line of pushing weight or not, what I was gonna say is, I guess, individual like weakness. So everyone just kind of works on weightlifting, but they don't have the awareness maybe themselves, which is understandable if you're just not good at weightlifting or you're not a weightlifting coach. But from the coaching realm, it's understanding what an individual needs to work on for them in that lift, and being okay with straying from a general program, a general group program, in order to help like individuals. So
And that would be a coach's common mistake?
it's
both?
tricky because that's just the I guess that's just the realm where CrossFit is. It's a group class. You can only do so much for individuals in a class with the time. Like, so it's very hard in that space.
Almost impossible.
It's almost impossible.
Yeah.
You can't program for every individual for their weakness.
And you can't spend 10 minutes with one person.
You can't spend 10 minutes with one person, yeah. So that's where it's like, yeah, in the CrossFit realm it's hard. In weightlifting, I would say weightlifting coaches can do a better job with not just being comfortable with their program. Because so if someone's there for weightlifting and you develop a program, and it might be good, you might know what you're doing in terms of the selection of exercises, the percentage, the reps, the progression week to week, the ups and downs of the week in terms of intensity. That might be all ticked off and like your knowledge is good, but for like the 5 people that your weightlifting space is training, if one of them, you know, for the exercises that are there, it's not really going to help them get better for their weakness, then it's like, okay, for you, like we should like change this movement to work on this. So it's something I did yesterday. I help out at Raw Barbell, which is a weightlifting specific gym for Andy, who's the coach there and head owner. And he had his program set for his clients, but he gives me discretion, which is great because he trusts me to modify. That's the key. So having your outlying program that should help everyone for the most part come up in weightlifting, but then having the freedom and also like just the understanding when you might need to modify individually. So someone was working on Snatch tech, and there was a portion of it that I wanted them to work on, which is more at the top, the hips, the finish, the explosiveness. So I'm like, hey, look, it's not quite clicking with like the rest of the movement leading into that. So we're just gonna break it down and you're just gonna work from the hip, the high hang. So that was just a modification for that person. And yeah, so that's what I mean, I guess, by being able to work with individuals.
So for people that don't even know what a snatch is, like in your words, what would you say a snatch is, and why would you do that? Because it's Olympic weightlifting. No one needs to do Olympic weightlifting.
Yeah.
Sure?
Yeah. So the reason, so the snatch, I guess in my terms, is both the most technical and explosive barbell movement you could probably do. And going further in terms of my like appreciation of the snatch, it's an expression of moving weight that requires the beauty of it is the actual time and challenge it takes to master the movement compared to any other barbell or weighted movement, from powerlifting to weightlifting to bodybuilding.
Yeah.
So that's the difference.
It's definitely the scariest. It's definitely the hardest to get into, and then once you get it, it's the most satisfying.
Yeah.
Like,
and even when you get it, there's still stuff that you kind of like get better. Try. It's like never ending. It's not like a bicep curl. If you get shown a bicep curl once, you're set for life. You just like progress that loading wise. Yeah. With a snatch, you can get good at it, and you can decide to change your technique even, and be like, what if I try a different grip? What if I try a different start? Maybe I can get better at it, or maybe I can get worse at it. So it's like an individual expression once you have the baseline kind of understanding of it. So I mean, I'm geared like that in terms of, that's why I got bored of bodybuilding, and that's why I gravitated towards weightlifting and the snatch specifically, because it's like I want to find the most challenging thing and like see if I can get good at it. But that's kind of like how I'm geared. For a lot of people, it's the other way around, and it's like that's the most challenging thing. I'm really like not really gonna give it a go, and they kind of like just accept that they're gonna not be good at a snatch because they've already kind of like strayed away from that challenge of it, because it is daunting.
Fuck yeah. It's
The amount of time you got to put in to get good at it. But if you do somehow like manage to like get past that point of like mentality of like, I'm just gonna keep going at this and see what happens. When you hit a sweet snatch for the first time or second time or third time, whatever, it feels good.
I think, you know what, I think that's why CrossFit actually did an awesome job, because like 5 times, 10 times the amount of like just normal people, gym goers, that weren't athletes, that weren't competitive in anything, that found Olympic weightlifting and the snatch. You're forced to snatch something.
You're forced to, yeah.
Power, whether it be power or like a full squat snatch, you have to do it in class. It's going to be programmed twice a week.
Yeah.
Thereabouts.
Yeah.
Like, and that scary feeling will come twice a week.
Yeah.
You know?
So for sure, yeah, CrossFit was like a big gateway for people snatching. They just wouldn't otherwise have picked it up at all.
I tell you a sickening story, right? So six years ago, 6 years ago, I was coaching at a gym, and here's the freaky thing. I didn't write the program, but I was teaching myself snatch along with a class full of people. I was the coach.
Yeah.
And then when there's snatch on the board, I'd be like, you know what, everyone? I don't know how to snatch, so let's all practice together.
Yeah.
That's how crazy it used to be 6
yeah.
years ago. And I'll tell you what, I didn't even pull my finger out until I entered a comp. And in the comp, it was like one of the All-Stars affiliate series, and I was working in another gym at the time.
Yeah.
There were snatches.
Yeah.
And like that just woke me up. I bought a bar and a set of plates. I practiced for 2 weeks until the comp started, and like I literally taught myself how to snatch horribly.
Yeah.
About I think 70 kilos, and I had to do it for 12 reps. There was this one section in the right at the end of a big Indian file workout, like a chipper workout. Yeah, it was. It's just thinking back, stuff is like the Wild West, you know. So,
I mean, I think just to add on that, in CrossFit, snatches are still definitely one of the main movements that expose people in CrossFit at some point, from just like your regular kind of client to when they decide to do their first opens or their first local comp. Yeah, that always becomes if you've been avoiding it and you just do it like to the minimum kind of like level of the class. That's like just like your experience. That's one of the big movements. That I would say that, and heavy jerks. Most people can clean a lot better than they can jerk, because they might only be used to doing the jerks at light weights in the workouts. But if it's like a heavy in a comp, that exposes people.
Shoulders.
So yes, snatch and jerk, and maybe a few other more advanced gymnastics movements.
Yes.
Are the big ones. So I mean that's why I have a place, I guess, because at some point someone who progresses is going to be like stuck with the snatch, and that always exposes you. Like with CrossFit, if you're not that good at conditioning and you haven't been keeping that up to where you should be, it doesn't expose you to the extent that a lack of snatch training does. Because if you can't snatch something well, you just can't, right? Like it really like exposes you.
Well,
if your conditioning is bad, you can still move through a workout.
Yeah.
Because the movement is like a row or a burpee.
Yeah.
You might not be as fast, but you're not exposed to the point where you're stopped.
You're not.
You can keep moving.
Yeah, that's right.
You can keep pushing.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like, if someone does it poorly, it will hurt.
It will hurt.
Like, it hurts like hell. Like your wrists, your elbows, your shoulders.
Shoulders, yeah.
Your back, because you're overextended, because you've got bad hips or something.
Yeah.
Or if you've got no ankles, or poor ankle mobility, like, everything hurts. You know, I tell you what, it's given me, like, just that, because I'm aiming for a good snatch, I ended up with amazing shoulders, amazing hips, and like core, you name it, like everything.
Yeah,
that,
so if you do like, if there's like an overhead walking lunge, I think last year's open or 2 years ago, overhead walking lunges with a bar and
now with
chest to bar
dumbbells.
pull-ups.
Now
Yeah,
with
now with dumbbells. Oh,
even worse.
if your snatch game is good, all that overhead lunge work with dumbbells, dumbbell snatches, that stuff, it transfers big time. Because the snatch is like the king of like complexity and load in the overhead realm.
Yep.
And then if you're already good at that, like I don't need to practice like an overhead walking lunge or like a dumbbell snatch, and I'm confident like if it comes up, then my shoulders are okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that might segue into our next question, which is, so someone snatch plateaus, and you know, what are things that you've found that will just get people up and over in terms of hips, in terms of shoulders, because that's where it's at, right? Like, it's always hips and shoulders,
Yeah.
or ankles, but mainly shoulders and hips. So what have you found in your toolbox that has gotten people, you know, through that?
Yeah, so it's usually the lower half or the upper half, like you said, or both, maybe.
Yeah.
So just, I guess, like you said, in terms of the podcast being more about mindset, I think that it starts with that in terms of, okay, having the mindset to be like, okay, I might need to take a couple steps back from just like trying to like snatch this barbell and the weight and pushing that, and being open to working on what I might need to based on a coach to get better. So what has really helped me in terms of my own training and as well as coaching other people is making sure I try and get the knowledge on how to address a lot of different issues in the snatch or weightlifting in general through other coaches, and constantly seeing like physios and chiros and be like, how can I get like better with these issues? So just starting to add to that toolbox. So a lot of it is like accessory based work, and that's where, like I said, the mindset comes in, that someone needs to be open to, this is what I need to do to help, because it's always like the boring stuff sometimes. Yeah, like the shoulder and the hip stability stuff, whether it's mobility or stability, it's always the boring stuff. It's like just putting in that time to do those 2 or 3 sets of prep or like activation before or between sets is missing. So, you know, just, yeah.
I don't know if because you've got more experience than me, but do you guys use a lot of shoulder dislocates?
Yeah.
Is that a big thing, like weighted?
So I think you could probably speak on weighted shoulder dislocates and your experience with that for the shoulders. I've mainly used shoulder dislocates unweighted, just as just a bang for buck range of motion shoulder opener. So when I first started, that was probably one of my biggest overhead mobility pieces when I first started CrossFit. I kind of when I started CrossFit, I just took what I found to be the most effective for me, and was just religious at it. So shoulder dislocates I did every day.
Yep.
But the thing is, I did it and I kept trying to push my grip in, which makes it harder, but it elicits improvement, right? So those two, like I did it religiously, but I didn't like. Sometimes people say I stretch every day, but you know when they're not like really stretching, they might just go through the motions of doing the dislocate. They might not challenge their width.
They're not even thinking about their scap, their rhomboids.
Yeah, just stuff like that. So I always say like think about what you're doing too, so you're actually getting something out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So not just doing it every day, but like actually trying to get the improvement. So that was one thing. A couple of things I did for my hips, I did religiously, but like even just like as an example of that is like doing a couch stretch for your hips, for your hip flexors and your quads, which at the time was like just mobility what was big, and that was like a mainstay. But I would do that and like time it for like a minute to 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And like really try and squeeze that out.
Yeah,
Most people do that and they don't time it. They're not really pushing it. It's short. So
passive.
the difference between doing and just having the mindset to do it religiously to get where you want to get, if those areas are what you want to improve on. I've played a little bit with shoulder dislocates with weight, but I haven't really progressed it myself. So I would say you're better off to commentate on that. But yeah, I've kind of like played with it.
Because when I was learning how to snatch, and I had no shoulder mobility, that's the only thing that I used. I didn't do anything else. I did shoulder dislocates, not even weighted. I've only done weighted like the last probably year, because I've got this challenge for myself. I'm trying to do a shoulder dislocate with a 20 kilo bar.
Mad.
I want to just like walk up to a warm-up bar, go through my positions, and then be able to like go for reps. Shoulder dislocate. I managed to get a rep of the 15 kilo bar the other week.
Yeah.
Which I've never tried before, you know, but like I think I'm almost there.
Yeah.
Like I'm down to like I can do I think 10, 12 kilos for sets of 10.
I think we should preface this with like anyone that's watching.
Yeah,
don't not just do it with the bar. Don't try with the bar.
Because
try with a stick first, and like you start with like a little fractional plate, right? Like, like a stick, guys. A stick first.
Yeah.
And then like 1 kilo on the stick. Try that first.
Really
no one go out and grab. Because it's called a shoulder dislocate, but you will actually dislocate with a bar if you try that off
Definitely
the bat.
with a dowel.
Next minute, Alan's getting messages.
But I mean,
dislocated my shoulder, Alan.
But is it a thing? Like, do people do this? Shoulder dislocates with a 20 kilo bar? It's not common, is it?
It's not common, no.
It's not common.
Like, you'd have to be like a freak gymnastics background type person. Like, I know, what's that guy's name? The
Klokov?
No, the other guy, Toriki.
Yeah.
He does it.
Wow, he can do it.
He does it with a bar.
Yeah.
In a pancake.
Right.
So
right.
Split pancake is like your legs out to the side, and he gets his chest to the floor, and then he dislocates back with the bar.
Right.
That's on Instagram. So that's just showing off, but
that's that is hard. But then he's got gravity on his side.
Pushing down his chest.
And
I'm sure he could do it like standing too.
Yeah.
Though I think he's doing the pancake just for added effect.
Right.
Yeah.
Because he's a beast.
Yeah, but I think the main message from this is like people should really find like the one thing that addresses what they need to work on right? That's effective for them, and be religious with it, right? So you found that, I found dislocates as well,
Yeah.
and we're religious with it. People get bored too easy.
Yeah. And here's another caveat. I found clubs and kettlebells and animal flows, like all that, all everything. There's a shoulder component in all of that. So like, yeah, for a couple of years I was hitting like those alternative methods like pretty hard, like especially clubs and that, which add like this crazy rotational force into your shoulders. So yeah, and then I went back onto shoulder dislocates and found that I was a lot stronger. So it wasn't just that.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
But usually what you find, you're gonna try it like for like an extended period of time to really be able to say, okay, I've tried it and I can see the benefit or not. I think people try a lot of things, but don't give it enough time to really make a judgment.
Don't have like
that patience.
Have bad shoulder mobility and then try a 20 kilo bar.
Yeah.
Like you need.
No, but like them stretching like once or twice in that week and being like, oh, I tried getting better.
Yeah.
It's like,
no.
Do it religiously.
What's the weightlifting rule? It's can you get into position? Can you do it slowly? And then
I have to see you get into like the bottom of the overhead squat well before I would try to squat snatch with you.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm just be like, nah, power snatch, and we need to work on that bottom position before like I can actually push you like with load to a squat snatch, because I'm not worried about showing you the technique. It's the position you can achieve at the bottom.
And then it's not scary.
Because I can show you the technique to get there, but if your body is like just not good in a good position, it's never going to be good.
It's going to hurt.
It's going to hurt.
Scary.
It's going to be scary, yeah.
And you're not going to want to do it.
Yeah.
But people do it. Over and over and
people
over.
People do it, yeah.
Like, yeah.
I mean, I get it. Like, we've all done dumb shit with like training because we just want to try and push it. I get it. Yeah. Like, we've all made mistakes, so it's a learning curve. But sometimes, unfortunately, like it becomes injury.
And I'll tell you what happens. Once you do something properly, and you that becomes your method, doing something properly, it actually flows on to a lot of different things, and you find that you become a really great learner and a good student, and then all of a sudden you're not getting injured, all of a sudden everything's fun, and it's like an exciting feeling rather than just overcoming like intimidation, you know?
Yeah.
That's what I found for myself. Like, I'm like, oh, you know what, I'm gonna do something hard, but...
You have the awareness to like, yeah, you get that awareness through knowledge of how much you can push and when, and maybe when to be smarter.
Yeah, like,
and pull it back and like get into technique or mobility, and yeah, so
that's awesome. So enough about Snatch. You know, I think it's a gift that keeps on giving. So, you know, if you don't want to do it, that's fine, but if you get into it, it's like it's something quite special to be able to do well, and like, yeah, that's what I truly believe.
Yeah.
It's one of my most proudest like things that I've attained in terms of fitness and you know, just skills acquired through, you know, almost 40 years of living. You know, having a strong snatch, a good, you know, snatch is something to be proud of. Tell us about. I want to talk about, you know, where you're taking things in the future, because you're really active these days. You're out there, you know, we're talking about like coaching, apparel, heaps of media, which I'll tell you what, like it's really impressive how like it almost seems like there's 3 Snatch Senseis out there.
Yeah.
So tell us about, you know, your plans and what you're doing, really.
So a big inspiration for me is Gary Vee and what he does and how much he pushes and hustles and puts out there. So I draw a lot of inspiration from him. If you guys follow him, you'll kind of get a little bit of a like understanding of, oh, yeah, I can see that connection now between what I'm doing. If you've never followed him before,
I like him. He's a really real dude. He swears a lot.
his yeah, his real like it's practical advice. It's not too like, I think, and there's a place for like motivational stuff. I get it. Like I do it too. Like the motivational quote, that's a bit more like idealistic, but like it's not as practical every day to be like waking up and being like, you know, in the clouds and like the fairies, right? You got to do stuff on this ground level.
I think it all has a place. It
all has a place, yeah.
That
like you have big dreams, big goals, and dream about it, but if you don't do anything like with where you are, you're never gonna bridge that gap. So having that realism each day. So yeah, that's a big inspiration for me. And I guess stemming from that, most of what I do now is out of passion and feel, and just trying to figure it out, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't. So yeah, just taking the approach of doing because I feel like it, because I'm passionate about it, and seeing what happens, seeing if it takes, learning, trial and error. That's where it stems from. So it's hard for me to say I'll give a good articulate kind of like response in terms of my like where it's all going to end up, because a lot of it may not continue to happen. So I'm just trying.
Brother, believe me.
Yeah.
Like that's.
Yeah, I'm just trying more than anything else. With like some people kind of like are restricted in terms of they spend too long thinking about like the perfect situation, perfect like everything, and they don't do enough up until that point, and they're being held back and being blocked. So apparel, content, podcast, YouTube, Instagram, weightlifting, coaching, just trying to push myself. It's all for passion.
Well, I think you're part of a new breed that can see what the potential could be, and you're part of that generation that has come from just a different way of operating, where it's like, you know, get a job, get a house, put your head down, have babies, that's it. Whereas if you see like people like Gary Vee, people like that are just pumping all this content and they're helping people, they're getting people like just crazy inspired. They're like, holy crap, the world is actually attainable, you know?
Yeah.
And then there's not even just one guy, there's like hundreds of these guys that they're like beacons of like light that, you know, they're like given like real information. If you choose to like absorb it and utilize it, sure enough, like 80% of the stuff may not match you, may not work, but what you're doing, what I can see, it's like you're out there, you're putting the time in, and like, you know what I can see that's really cool? The basis of what you're doing, the foundation of what you're doing, where you're coaching people and your like your product in itself, like your brand, I hate that word, but your product and brand is helping people. That's the basis of it.
Yes. Yeah.
Everything else that stems from it is going to be good.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of time before you tune it in, where, you know, your production level and your gear comes up to a certain level, where your apparel becomes streamlined and it's automated, you know, your web store, and then it's almost like, okay, now you're a coach, you've got online content, you've got apparel, and like I can see that's what's happening, you know, with you. So I'm going to be like, you know, watching and, you know, like eagerly awaiting the next, you
Just
know,
keep doing it,
stuff that happens. So before we wrap it up, anything that you want to say, any call outs, any sort of, you know, any sort of actions that people could take?
I guess just doing more. Most of my stuff, like I said, comes from passion, but doing more, like just like giving it a go, knowing that there's passion and intent, good intention behind it, like not caring like about judgment, or anything, how it's perceived behind it, or like even not caring that I don't actually know where I'm going with it all. I'm just doing out of passion. So that's like, I don't know, but I do know because it's out of passion. So that's a big one. And also just thank you to everyone that has been following me grow recently, because I never thought I could, like I started off like Snatch Sensei weightlifting coach and be like, okay, I'm gonna like really push myself because I believe in my ability as that kind of like specialist coach, and tap into that and try and like impact weightlifting and make it cool and make it mainstream and put content out there to make it more accessible as a thing. So that was initially, but I never thought, oh, I'm gonna like get in front of a camera and talk about, send a positive message about what I'm doing is my success mindset series, just talking about like mindset. I never thought I would be doing that because I thought, okay, I've watched people like Gary Vee, Tony Robbins, and it's like, I'm a weightlifting coach, that this is my lane, and I boxed myself in initially. And look, I just tried those things. I put a few, motivational posts out or quotes, I guess. I don't like the term motivational because I like to be practical as well. I'm just sharing my knowledge and experience that may help someone. So I appreciate like the fact that a few people have taken something from it and let me know, I guess, and interacted back with me, because it's like I didn't think it would like affect not even one person, because like you just sit there and be like, that's Tony Robbins, that's what he does. I'm not like an inspirational person, I guess, like that, but I'm just sharing what I know. So I appreciate and thank the people that have let me know, like, hey, like what you put that day, like I know it wasn't directed towards me, but that hit home, and like I got something from that. I'm like, hey, that's cool. Like that makes me know that I'm doing something and I can keep going and like not like worry about like, oh, I just got to be a weightlifting coach and like show weightlifting snatch technique and that's it. So that's big, I think, for people to like for me to share that, and for people to recognize like they can do whatever, they can do stuff too. Like just do what you feel and what you know, and that it starts from there.
Brother, here's my take, right? Like seriously, like my take on Instagram, Facebook and all that, like even though a lot of it stems from vanity, but you know what, if you don't like that, or it makes you feel bad, then there might be some shit you need to like sort out on your own. It's not that person's fault. They love themselves. Cool, love yourself. That's your, like, that's a good thing, right? And like no fucks given, right?
Yeah.
I tell you what, a lot of people say, oh, like it's very, like it's like you're masturbating yourself every time you post a training video of yourself. Yes, it is, but you know what? Like people have told me, hey, you know how you post a video every day of you training? They go like, it took them 6 months of watching that and they got off the couch. So I say to myself, I go, is that worth? I don't do it for that.
Yeah.
But it happened.
It happened, yeah.
That happened. So it's like, do you masturbate? Is that bad? No. Like, you know what? I do enjoy watching myself progress. I can't deny that. I would be lying if I was to. And then furthermore, if someone tells you it's self-mastered to blah blah, to, I don't even know how to say it.
Putting a negative spin on it, yeah.
Putting a negative spin on it, and it's like, fuck, so should I stop posting videos of myself training? And then it's like, no, because when people watch it, they actually do get inspired, like, and here's the definition, clarification, right? I used to always think to myself, what's the difference between motivation and inspiration? What do you reckon? because you never think about it, right? You think it's the
Yeah.
same thing. It's actually different. It's
Yes.
actually two different things.
Yeah.
So inspiration is like that first. So you might watch something 10 times, but then it's that first time that you go, boom, mind blown.
Yeah.
Whereas motivation, it's what keeps you going.
Yeah.
So someone may use your fitness videos for constant motivation,
Yeah.
but it may take that one message to inspire somebody. So both are different and equally as important.
Yeah.
And then of course the next step is, how do you keep going past those 2 points? How do you then make it like your ethos, your way of living, where you don't need inspiration or motivation anymore? It's just like the way you operate. I think you need all of it.
Yeah.
You know,
do.
I think you need all of it, and you need, it all has a place, a step. So I'm just rambling on.
Yeah. I think that's it.
Because I could talk about that stuff forever. I love mindset, and I love just you know, the whole why do you do things? Why, like lately I've been shooting 100+ arrows a day. Why, you know? It's
We should start off the next one on that.
yeah, true. But thank
the
you.
mindset behind it,
Yeah,
the story behind it.
that'll be the next one. So anything else before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I think if you've gotten this far, or if we can just get this last part out there somehow, for anyone that is following us now, because I know, you know, you're here to train by yourself sometimes, and then sometimes you hang around, but otherwise, like, people might not always see you, like, because you're not like full-time coaching. Myself as well, I kind of like get into my own zone, training on my own, and then people see what I'm doing, but they don't get to get the insight that they're getting now. Is just to let us know what they want to kind of like hear, maybe next or in future.
Yep.
Things that are covered.
Yep.
It was kind of obvious for us to talk about like the snatch because of me initially, but I mean that can get a bit too serious and technical. So I'd love to like just delve into other stuff like.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Like, if whatever subjects, and no joke, we could even get someone else on, someone else that, because no joke, this for me is like, for my own greedy little sort of knowledge. I love just, you know, absorbing just the way people are, and the like, you know, like I like to pick up just one little thing where I'm like, oh cool, I'm gonna try that. So let's get a whole bunch of just different guests.
Yeah.
You know, like local, just whatever, politicians to the baker.
Yeah,
you know, like
that's it.
there's a lady in Cabramatta, she just gives out hot bread. I don't know, like if would she be willing to come out and talk about why she does that? You know, what makes like the perfect pork roll.
Yeah.
You know, because I know there's a lot of shit pork rolls in Australia.
Yeah.
Tons of shit pork rolls in Australia.
Yeah.
So stuff like that, everything.
That's it.
You know, best fur, whatever.
Yeah.
You know. So to sign off, I'm gonna say, you know, thanks for listening to the Push to Shove podcast. If push comes to shove, will you be prepared? Will you have the tools and skills, physicality, control to get the outcome that you want? If you don't, then you need to, you know, listen to the Push to Shove podcast. So, thanks, brother.
That's it.